This is Keith Thompson of Reformed Apologetics Ministries. Although unbelievers have no objective moral framework with which to claim anything is actually immoral or wrong in reality, they nevertheless make moral claims and thus borrow from the Christian worldview, the only system of thought that provides a valid framework or precondition for the objective moral absolutes we all live by and assume. Because of their fallen nature, they even do this when they attack the Bible, which is intellectually schizophrenic. One specious attack on the Bible has to do with alleged genocide in the Old Testament. Because this is supposedly advocated in the Bible, unbelievers claim the Bible is immoral and should not be followed. But again, in atheistic naturalistic materialism, where men are just stardust or random meat sacks who appeared on some random rock by chance, why is getting rid of a bunch of other meat sacks actually wrong or immoral? Suffering is wrong? Why is it wrong, given atheism? How do unbelievers know it is wrong, given their worldview? They can't account for why suffering is actually wrong or immoral. Now, let us refute this objection historically and exegetically. Modern scholarship is moving towards the view that the Old Testament used an ancient Near Eastern hyperbolic warfare literary device called exaggeration victory rhetoric. When the utter destruction of Israel's enemies is ordered or reported using language like kill both man, woman, child, and infant, 1 Samuel 15:3, they devoted all the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, ox, sheep, and donkeys, Joshua 6:21. Devoting to destruction every city, men, women, and children, Deuteronomy 3:6. And kill and devote them to destruction, Jeremiah 50:21, etc. These are common ancient Near Eastern literary devices for warfare against enemy combatants, not meant to be taken literally, but meant to denote a decisive war victory. This is easily verified. As we go through each war episode, we will see evidence these are not literal commands or accounts. As the scholar Paul Copan observes concerning this literary device, quote, "But ancient Near Eastern accounts readily used utterly completely destroy and other obliteration language even when the event didn't actually happen that way. Here's a sampling. Egypt's Thutmosis III, later 15th century, boasted that the numerous army of Mitanni was overthrown within the hour, annihilated totally, like those now non-existent. But in fact, Mitanni's forces lived on to fight in the 15th and 14th centuries BC. Hittite king Murshili II, who ruled from 1322 to 1295 BC, recorded making Mount Asharpea empty of humanity, and the mountains of Tarakarimu empty of humanity. The Bulletin of Ramses II tells of Egypt's less than spectacular victories in Syria around 1274 BC. Nevertheless, he announces that he slew the entire force of the Hittites, indeed all the chiefs of all the countries, disregarding the millions of foreigners which he considered chaff. In the Merneptah Stele, 1230 BC, Ramses II's son, Merneptah, announced, "Israel is wasted, his seed is not," another premature declaration. Moab king Mesha, 840 to 830 BC, bragged that the northern kingdom of Israel has utterly perished for always, which was over a century premature. The Assyrians devastated Israel in 722 BC. The Assyrian ruler, Sennacherib, 701-681 BC, used similar hyperbole. "The soldiers of Hermim, dangerous enemies, I cut down with the sword, and not one escaped," unquote. Paul Copan has got a moral monster, page 172. Copan cites as his references K. Lawson Younger Jr., Ancient Conquest Accounts, a study in ancient Near Eastern and biblical history writing; K. A. Kitchen, On the Reliability of the Old Testament; Laurie K. Rowlett, Joshua and the Rhetoric of Violence, a New Historical Analysis, etc. As we go through these Old Testament war accounts, we will discover evidence that the utterly destroy them language was not meant to be taken literally, but in this hyperbolic sense, in conformity with the ancient Near Eastern exaggeration rhetoric we discussed above. Hence, when all is said and done, and this recent top-notch scholarship is studied, unbelievers, quote-unquote, have no basis to criticize these biblical texts and wars. The Canaanites. In Deuteronomy 7, 1-2 and 5, we're told the Canaanites were to be devoted to complete destruction, etc. And unbelievers claim this supports genocide. However, first, this passage is following this ancient Near Eastern hyperbolic exaggeration rhetoric. Not everyone was killed, despite the presence of strong language denoting victory, which was common at the time. We see confirmation of this in Judges 2:1-3, which shows that after the wars with the Canaanites, there were still many living. Concerning the 7 Canaanite nations, the angel of the Lord said the following to the people of God after these wars, quote, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare to you, unquote. Judges 2:3. Hence the utterly destroy them language that was reported is not to be taken literally, since many Canaanites were still alive even after the battles with them, which, according to quote-unquote unbelievers and their uninformed surface-level misunderstanding of the text, resulted in their literal, complete, and utter destruction, wherein no mercy was shown. Second, Genesis 15:16 shows God gave the Amorites, that is the most powerful tribe of Canaanites, 400 years to repent of their utter abomination. He let them live for 4 generations, since their sin did not peak to the point of no return. Until that time, quote, and they, Abraham's offspring, shall come back in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete, unquote. Genesis 15:16. Thus the Canaanites brought destruction on themselves by reaching unthinkable levels of wickedness and not repenting. Third, as noted, the eventual level of immorality embraced by the Canaanites brought on their destruction. God, as the judge of creation, has the right to execute judgment when he wishes. Leviticus 18:6 and 20-30 demonstrates the 7 nations of the land of Canaan, see verses 24-25 and 28, allowed incest, verse 6, adultery, verse 20, child sacrifice to Moloch, that is an idol with a furnace for a belly where the children would be incinerated, verse 21, homosexuality, verse 22, and bestiality, verse 23. Much of their sexual sin was in the context of religious temple sex. Thus they were judged and expelled from the land because of these unthinkable transgressions. Commenting on these verses, the Old Testament scholar R. Laird Harris notes, quote, the Canaanites had no covenant relation to God, yet for their excess of abominations God punished them, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. Saul and the Amalekites in 1 Samuel 15:1-4. In this text, Saul is commanded to go and strike Amalek and devote to utter destruction all they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey, unquote. And unbelievers claim this also supports genocide, due to their ignorance. But as noted, this type of utterly destroy them, man, woman, child, infant, etc., language was commonplace in the Near East and is not to be taken literally. It was simply a way back then of saying there was going to be a war victory against enemy combatants. How do we know Saul did not literally annihilate all the Amalekites, including women and children? Because later in 1 Samuel 27:8, we see that there are Amalekites still living. They are also seen again in 1 Samuel 30 in massive number, 400. See verses 1-17. Thus, to argue Saul literally wiped out all the Amalekites, including women and children, is erroneous, since the totality of the book demonstrates that's false. Now, it must be asked, who were the Amalekites and why was war with them justified? Immediately after Israel crossed the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness in Rephidim, in Exodus 17, these barbaric nomad Amalekites viciously attacked them there, Exodus 17:1 and 8. As Copan notes, the Amalekites were relentless in their aim to destroy Israel, and they continued to be a thorn in Israel's side for generations. For example, Judges 3:13, 6:3-5 and 33, 7:12 and 10:12, etc., unquote. Excursus on Joshua's wars in Jericho and Ai. Unbelievers quote Joshua 6:21 and 8:25, which again mentions this utterly destroy them language. It says, then they devoted all the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys, with the edge of the sword, and all who fell that day, both men and women, were 12,000, all people of Ai, unquote. However, this follows the same pattern of ancient Eastern exaggeration war victory rhetoric, and concerns attacks on forts and military garrisons, not actual civilians, despite the strong hyperbolic language, as Paul Copan notes. There is no archaeological evidence of civilian populations at Jericho or Ai. Jericho and Ai were military strongholds. In fact, Jericho guarded the travel routes from the Jordan Valley up to population centers in the hill country. It was the first line of defense at the junction of 3 roads leading to Jerusalem, Bethel, and Orpah. That means that Israel's wars here were directed towards government and military installments. This is where the king, the army, and the priesthood resided. The term city, reinforces this idea. Jericho, Ai, and many other Canaanite cities were mainly used for governmental buildings and operations, while the rest of the people, including women and children, lived in the surrounding countryside. The Amara letters, 14th century BC, correspondence between Egyptian pharaohs and leaders in Canaan and surrounding regions, revealed the citadel cities or fortresses such as Jerusalem and Shechem were distinct from and under the control of their population centers. Other biblical evidence of various cities used as fortresses, citadels, or military outposts exists. For example, Rabbah in 2 Samuel 12:26, Zion in 2 Samuel 5:7, and 1 Chronicles 11:5-7. According to the best calculations from Canaanite inscriptions and other archaeological evidence, i.e. no artifacts or prestige ceramics indicating wealth or social status as one would expect in population centers, Jericho was a small settlement of probably 100 or fewer soldiers. This is why Israel could circle it 7 times over and then do battle against it on the same day, unquote. Paul Copan is God, a Moral Monster, pages 175 to 176. Thanks for watching.